Good evening. It's voting day in the UK. More than 45 million voters are expected to cast their vote to elect the next Prime Minister of the country. The timing is important. Barely 11 days before the crucial Brexit negotiations kick off, the incumbent Prime Minister Theresa May called this poll in the hope of getting a bigger majority to strengthen her hand in divorce talks with the EU. But terror attacks have diminished her lead. Opinion polls have been oscillating between a 50-seat majority to a neck-and-neck fight. This election is a gamble that may pay off for the Tories, it may not. It is also important because it has a record number of Indian origin candidates. With 1.2 million voters, Indians are the largest ethnic group in the country. On Gravitas tonight, we look at all the angles, bring you ground reports and also look ahead to the big result day tomorrow. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. The top headlines this Thursday. Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Astana for India's first SCO summit meets the Kazakh president on the sidelines. Delhi rules out any meeting with Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who's also present. Pakistan recommends 3 names to the ICJ for appointment as ad hoc judges in the Jadhav case. Agents from India and Pakistan meet Chief Justice Ronnie Abraham. And Iran calls US President Donald Trump's statement on the parliament attack repugnant, blames Saudi Wahhabi ideology for terrorism. Police patrols go up in Tehran a day after twin terror attacks. And as always, some specials lined up for you on the show. A closer look at the Qatar crisis, why the world cares about what happens in that tiny Arab nation, and what's in the offing for Afghanistan. James Mattis says Taliban cannot be part of a political solution. India may be mulling a military role. We'll get you the big picture. But first, to the story that's developing as we speak. Former FBI Chief James Comey is testifying on Capitol Hill about his interactions with American President Donald Trump before he was fired. A top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee said that Comey was threatened by Donald Trump and asked Comey to drop an investigation into a senior aide. This violated clear guidelines designed to prevent political interference into FBI investigations. Donald Trump later said that James Comey was not doing his job. Comey is currently talking about alleged Russian meddling in last year's presidential elections in America. Comey says he created a memo in January because he was concerned that Donald Trump may lie. He says that the Trump administration defamed him. Comey also says that he found the shifting explanations for why Trump fired him both confusing and concerning. Listen in.
Honestly concerned that he might lie about the nature of our meeting, and so I thought it really important to document. That combination of things I'd never experienced before, but it led me to believe I got to write it down, and I got to write it down in a very detailed way. I knew that there might come a day when I would need a record of what had happened, not just to defend myself, but to defend the FBI and our integrity as an institution and the independence of our investigative function.
Joining us from California, Stephen Golub, an international affairs expert. Good evening, Stephen. We've heard what the former FBI director had to say about the U.S. president. Do Donald Trump's alleged actions constitute obstruction of justice?
Could be, and it depends who you talk to. However, much of what he did is similar to what got our former president, Richard Nixon, into trouble for obstructing justice 45 years ago in the Watergate investigation. He would have been impeached based on that had he not resigned. So yes, this is open to interpretation. Obstruction of justice is not the clearest legal term in the world, but it is very possible that we're moving towards building a case towards obstruction of justice in the United States.
And is this then the beginning of the impeachment proceedings, if at all?
Not exactly. It could be seen as a significant step towards that, but if it comes to impeachment, it could be that is months or conceivably even years down the line. Don't simply view this as a matter of impeachment, however. there are other legal and political struggles that will go on. Legal in the sense that we now have a special counsel, Robert Mueller, investigating the whole swirl of activity regarding Russian interference with our elections. Political in that there'll be big pushback from the Trump administration in terms of trying to mobilize supporters, cast doubt on what Congress is investigating, and especially on special counsel Mueller's investigation. So this is a possible step towards that, but certainly not definite.
I'm quoting Comey's words, there should be no fuss on this whatsoever. The Russians interfered in our election. How damaging is this testimony overall for the U.S. president, who's already, as you said, fighting a lot of battles domestically?
Well, at the risk of telling WION or suggesting what WION should cover, you might want to revisit this issue tomorrow when the whole testimony is finished and some of the dust is settled in terms of analysis. But it is, in and of itself, the fact that the Russians interfere with our elections is very significant. And as I've mentioned previously on your show, potentially even significant to India and other democracies, because it opens the door to Russian or conceivably using similar techniques, China or other nations interfering with your own elections. But in and of itself, the fact that the Russians interfered does not necessarily implicate Trump or his administration. What is significant, however, are the many, many contacts, some of them secret, that Trump administration or Trump campaign officials had with the Russians along the way. Whether that connection will be firmly established in terms of collusion on the part of Trump associates or Trump himself with the Russians remains to be determined.
James Comey also admitted to leaking his memo scribblings to the press. How does that reflect on him and his credibility?
That remains to be seen. It depends on much more context in terms of discussion of how that information came out and the like. Whether that will really undermine his credibility in terms of the overall context of this story remains to be seen.
Right, we'll see how this plays out. The testimony is still on as we speak, Stephen Golub, and we'll take your advice. We'll take it up tomorrow night and discuss this in detail on the implications of what James Comey, the former FBI director, had to say about Russian interference, about what US President Donald Trump did or did not say to him. A very big story developing.